stick with you for a second, Alexis. We mentioned Rethink DB yesterday, this article that everyone should read, a company that was going to build an open source business. And unfortunately, they didn't make it. The company sort of ended up having to fold because they couldn't build a business around this software that they built. You also mentioned Netflix, which of course, it gives away its software. So while Netflix doesn't give away its programs, they certainly take my money. They do, as a side effect of their operations, give away software like Chaos, Monki, and other things. Is it even possible to build a business around open source today? How can you help people to do that in a world where A, Netflix is giving it away, and B, Amazon is there saying, well, actually, we're going to take all the money?
Yes. We're expecting the IPO of MuleSoft, I think in the first half of this year. They will IPO at well over $1 billion market cap, I'm sure. They've built a business off the back of Mule, an open source project, and some ancillary projects they created, focusing on the incredibly lucrative area of business integration, which, as anybody who's worked in a large company knows, is a colossal sink in terms of money. Probably 30% plus of IT spend in large companies just goes on integration, joining systems together. And MuleSoft built a business to make it easy to do that, which sounds like a particularly unoriginal idea, but turned out to be brilliant. And so, yeah, you can make money out of open source. Red Hat do it, other people do it too. And some people do it indirectly, like Netflix and Google.
One of my favorite topics of conversation. So I should probably mention that I've been involved in open source for 12 years now, and our entire business at Bitnami is based around open source, and I've worked with and watched the rise and fall of a lot of open source companies over the years as a result. One thing that maybe a lot of people in this room know, but maybe not, is like they say Amazon makes more money off of MySQL than anybody else because they take MySQL, which is a free and open source project, and they turn it into a service, and they make boatloads of money that way. I know their database services are one of their fastest growing areas of revenue. So there are a lot of people making up money off of open source that aren't necessarily the ones that built the software. It is possible, but I think you have to be careful. And I think, a lot of companies have, Docker is a pretty popular example of this. They've open sourced so much of their code without first having a really solid business model around it. They'll probably do fine. They've got a lot of smart people, great technology, and a boatload of money in the bank in time to figure it out. But if you don't end up in that situation and you give everything away too early, it can actually be really difficult to build a business around open source. And the thing that we've seen work best is either something called an open core model, where you open source as much as you can, but there are some enterprise features that you keep private, which, it's difficult to draw the line, and a lot of people who are passionate about open source feel that's not the right thing to do. But if you're trying to build a business that can actually scale and grow, that seems to be the most straightforward way and the thing that we've seen work. The other thing is monetize through different areas. Like at Bitnami, without pitching my company and what we do, we package open source. I loved that talk about thinking about it as a luxury product, and I guarantee you I'm talking to my VP of engineering about that next week because it's something we strive to do, but I've never heard it described so eloquently before. But we package up software to try and make it easy for people to consume, and we don't charge users, but we charge vendors to whom we supply and make guarantees around keeping the software up to date and packaged so they can deliver a great experience through their own app stores. And so we found a model to monetize not through the actual end users of our software, but through platform providers instead. Well, we're not IPOing yet, so you could argue whether or not you can build a great business, but we've scaled up to 70 people that way, and we're continuing to grow. So, and bootstrapped. Yeah, no VC.
So, from a Cloud Foundry Foundation perspective, it's sort of an interesting one because the project came as a very corporate thing. You had Pivotal as a company that had built a piece of technology, and then IBM came on board. Are there other companies out there that might be able to? How would other companies actually build something sustainable, or is it your role to sort of support the challenge of those companies?
Well, I'll say one thing. I'm new to open source, and So I've learned a lot in the last year from Jim Zimmerlin, who's been in it forever. But we are what I often say is we're a 501c6. We are not a 501c3. So the one guy. But essentially what that means is there's a couple of things that gives you as an open source. 501c6 means that we own the trademark, we own the IP. And the amazing thing about that I've learned is that means that no for-profit company can ever own that IP. So it's a great security blanket for that IP. But more than that is the reason I pointed out that we're a 501c6 and not a C3 is that we are not a philanthropy. We're not here for people to volunteer and do things. We are a collaborative R&D project. And I want to point that out because for me that is an important vision around what we are. Because the thing that I think is so amazing about open source and so amazing about that collaborative approach is that we can pull the best minds, the most diverse minds from different organizations, different backgrounds, and different perspectives with different commercialization outcomes around the table to say what can make this the best possible technology. And that is the most amazing thing when I think about it. So as we think about an open core model, which Cloud Foundry very much operates, we have 11 providers or 11 distros around Cloud Foundry today. Pivotal is the most notable, and IBM, but there's also GE's Predix and SAP's HANA Cloud Platform and Swisscom and Atos and Cisco and NTT and Huawei are all repackaging it and really building solutions around that. And I think the open core model means that we can continue to collaboratively build the best and most innovative technology at the core, but I still want each of them to be commercially successful. Because at the end of the day, Cloud Foundry is only successful as an open source when it's successful as a commercial product.
Great. So can I just ask then, from that perspective, one of the questions in my mind, and I know that Alexis has some views on this, so we can maybe go to him, but go to you first, would be, do you see your role then, I mean, it sort of sounds like you think you're a vendor. It's sort of acting like a vendor with a product.
Well, we have a product that takes a lot of different shapes. So we have the ability to focus on what is the best open source technology we can develop, but the go-to-market approach is very different depending on who is repackaging it and redistributing it, right? There's a big difference between what Pivotal is offering with Pivotal Cloud Foundry versus what GE Predix is offering. They're building very different business models around them and targeting very different areas. And I know that Alexis will have many opinions on this, but I also think as we think about moving up the stack and the commoditization as we continue to move up, packaged applications and packaged services are going to drive more value as we think about the evolution of what a platform can do. And I think that's where the projects like what CNCF is doing can really start pulling in those capabilities and really thinking and rethinking how we want to deliver applications.
Is there a new question, or is it the same one?
No, I'm really interested. You sort of think that the foundation has to have a strong opinion, and it plays a role of packaging that perhaps a vendor might have, I think. Or perhaps you could just do a better job of explaining your own opinion.
I think if you don't have an opinion, it's a bit like having no personality. And if you have no personality, it makes it very difficult for people to trust you. And if you're setting yourselves up as a trusted brand for software that you might use to build applications that businesses actually depend on, then you better have a personality and therefore an opinion. So we express our opinion in the CNCF by selecting projects that we think are outstanding and try and help them be successful, which includes being commercial friendly, trying to think very carefully about what the rules are going to be so that companies who are investing in these things can make money. There are other foundations where this is harder than we think it needs to be. And that puts people at conflict with one another in the end. So in terms of the question about an identity and a brand, I think it's really, really important for foundations to pool investment from sponsors and users and use that to build the identity, the brand of whatever the foundation is about. So in our case, it's all about cloud native. And the question is, in users' minds, what does that mean for me today? So the challenge for the CNCF is to educate people on that and to show them how that relates to the software they might be using. So that involves the usual things of promoting people who've been successful with the software, talking about the apps they've built, how that impacted their business, and what they're going to do next. So that's how we do it. It is a lot like promoting a product. There's another factor, which is that the way that people consume software seems to have changed. I think people have moved away from a kind of IBM model where, you know, it all happens in the back room and you meet some salespeople and they're all dressed up in suits and they have briefcases and the CEO and the CTO sit down with them and negotiate a deal, and then everyone else has to use that software. Now, things, as Stephen said yesterday, are very much more developer-driven, and convenience is very important. Quite often, the C-suite finds out later what the developers are actually doing and then decides to support it. And so that means that you have to think very carefully about how you run and package your software in the foundation itself. And your branding has to align with that. So you've got to encourage people, make it easy for things to be quick to start, you know, easy to get educated on, fast to build apps on, and things like that. And that is also a bit like building a modern software product.
Yes, slightly different angle, but so Eclipse has always been, you know, focused on open source and marrying that with commercial interests and making sure it's sustainable in that way. And recently, with like the Eclipse IoT, the role there has been kind of like a broker between big companies who want to collaborate in a new area and say, well, you know, IoT is a big area, there's a lot of money to be made in it, but we want to keep things open and we want to work together. And so you've got companies like Bosch and GE and Red Hat all coming together, and in that case, the Eclipse Foundation does play that role of being the broker between the companies and saying, well, this is the space we're going to work together, and this is how we're going to do something that is commercially viable, but out in the open with establishing standards and having implementations for those standards exist in the open, so that things can get adopted. So, and I think the foundations should and do play a very important role in that way.